Are we alone? At this point, with what we know about the universe, it's hard to imagine that we are. But have we seen anything that would indicate the presence of life outside of our planet? The real question is there actual evidence of alien life? With all the attention it's been getting these days, it's hard to ignore the UFO phenomena. There are numerous whistleblowers, admissions from the Pentagon, and a congressional hearing about the subject. The movement within the UFO community to push for disclosure has made the idea of aliens a likely reality that is now out of the realm of tinfoil hat theory. It's practically mainstream. Curiously so. I've been a UFO enthusiast for as long as I can remember. For me, it was in the same arena as ghosts and monsters. Fun, but in no way could it actually be real. But the odd thing about alien lore that sets it apart was that no government agency ever tried to discredit people who told ghost and monster stories. However, if you came forward about witnessing aliens or UFOs, you had people showing up to your door. Most of the popular UFO and abduction stories come with an extra layer that monster and ghost stories don't. Individuals who appear to be with the government showing up and telling you to keep your mouth shut. Unfortunately, most of these stories are swept under the rug and treated as conspiracy theory. Crackpots and whack jobs that have either lost their mind or are just looking for attention. So what evidence have we seen outside of these stories? Actually, we've seen plenty. Beyond just waiting for the aliens to show up on our doorstep, we've also been looking for other signs of life. Breadcrumbs that life leaves behind. And theoretically, intelligent life would have to communicate with each other. One way humans communicate with each other across the planet is through radio waves, so that seemed as good a place as any to start. Before we had the ability to send objects into space or land on foreign planets, radio waves were the only real hope we had at finding alien life. The thought process behind this being that if we humans discovered the ability to communicate through radio waves, then surely other intelligent life in our universe would have figured it out as well. Maybe even some of them are trying to reach us. In 1896, Nikola Tesla suggested that an extreme version of his wireless electrical transmission system could be used to contact beings on Mars. In 1899, while conducting experiments at his Colorado Springs station, Tesla thought that he had detected a signal from Mars. What he heard was very faint, but it seemed to be a numerical code. It was a repeating pattern of beeps. They followed the numerical order of 1, 2, 3, and then repeated. The following year, when the American Red Cross reached out to ask Tesla to predict man's greatest achievement over the next century, he replied back with this letter.
The retrospect is glorious, the prospect is inspiring. Much might be said of both, but one idea dominates my mind. This, my best, my dearest, is for your noble cause. I have observed electrical actions, which have appeared inexplicable, faint and uncertain though they were. They have given me a deep conviction and foreknowledge that ere long all human beings on this globe, as one, will turn their eyes to the firmament above with feelings of love and reverence, thrilled by the glad news. Brethren, we have a message from another world, unknown and remote. It reads 1, 2, 3.
Of course, Tesla's observations were explained away as simply misunderstanding the new technology that he was working with, or that what he was witnessing was naturally occurring radio noise caused by the moon of Jupiter. Very few people at the time believed that it was an actual alien communication. Nikola Tesla was a brilliant man, but in all fairness, faint beeps and open radio waves can hardly be accepted as solid evidence, and it's thought that his public statements about this experiment were used by his enemies to paint him as a mad scientist. However, it was because of the work of people like Nikola Tesla that future scientists would continue scanning the skies for intelligent life. In 1959, scientist Philip Morrison, who worked on the Manhattan Project with Robert J. Oppenheimer, and another scientist by the name of G.S.B. Cocconi, who was the director of CERN, published a paper stating that the most likely signal an extraterrestrial civilization would use to send a message would be at a frequency of 1420 megahertz. They came to this conclusion because this frequency is naturally emitted by hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most common element we found in the universe, making it likely familiar to all technologically advanced civilizations. It seemed at one point in the mid-1900s there was a race to find the first signal from an alien civilization. Using huge radio telescopes, scientists from the United States and Russia started scanning the skies. The phenomena became known as SETI, or the Search for Extraterrestrial Life. And in 1973, one of the longest-running SETI programs would launch in Columbus, Ohio. This program ran for years without success, until one day, while tuned into the 1420 MHz frequency, they found something. On August 15, 1977, the now famous WOW signal was discovered. This was a strong radio signal detected by the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio State University. The Big Ear telescope had a narrow window of time where it could observe any given point in space for just 72 seconds. This is because of certain factors like the rotation of the Earth and our current position in space. The WOW signal sequence lasted for the entire duration that the Big Ear was able to observe it. But the next opportunity we had to tune into the same area, the signal was gone. The WOW signal was important because it was unlike anything that we had ever picked up before. It was loud and more intense than anything else in the sky. So intense that the astronomer who discovered it, Jerry R. Amon, wrote the words "WOW" on the computer printout of the reading. It was also a narrow bandwidth signal, meaning that the sound emitted didn't leak over to other radio frequencies. This is more common in artificial broadcasts, and it's how we can tune into different radio stations without all of them playing over each other. Natural radio waves just aren't that careful, and while there have been attempts to explain this phenomena as comets or sounds from distant stars, there's still no general consensus as to what the sound actually was. To date, it's still considered to be some of the strongest evidence that we have for extraterrestrial life. But outside of the hope of intelligent life reaching out to us, there are other ways to track the existence of life without actually witnessing an alien creature. Life is messy, and it leaves all kinds of evidence behind through chemical signatures. These chemical biosignatures are found everywhere life is or has been. Life tends to leave its mark within the chemistry of rocks, in the bodies of water, and even in atmospheres. In 1976, the Viking Mars lander was sent to the Red Planet to find these signatures, and that's exactly what it found. One experiment mixed Martian soil with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas, and the test reported positive results. Radioactive methane would indicate that something in the soil was metabolizing the nutrients and producing the gas. But other experiments on board failed to find any evidence of life, so NASA declared the result a false positive. Basically, something seemed to be eating the nutrient, but they were unable to see anything that they would consider life. But whatever it was, it behaved like life. Back on planet Earth in 1984, a meteorite was found in Antarctica called Allen Hills 84001. Given the data we've collected in the past from the missions to Mars, they discovered that the rock was likely from the Red Planet. Later in 1996, a team of NASA scientists led by Dr. David McKay, chief scientist of astrobiology, announced that they found what appeared to be proof of Martian life inside of Allen Hills 84001. When they split the rock open, they found microscopic grains of magnetite and iron sulfide. The importance of finding magnetite, which is magnetic iron oxide, and iron sulfide together is that these two compounds are rarely found together in the presence of carbonates unless produced by bacterial metabolism. All life eats and produces waste. But that's not the only thing they found inside of the meteorite. They also found worm-like forms that resemble fossilized bacteria. Admittedly, this one would be very difficult to prove. With the amount of time that the meteorite spent on Earth before being discovered, it's possible that there was contamination from terrestrial bacteria, which is what researchers have argued. But Dr. McKay argued that they are well aware of what contamination inside of a meteorite looks like. This wasn't their first rodeo. What they found didn't look like contamination at all. What was found inside of the meteorite looked as though it was embedded in the indigenous material, making it more likely that whatever it was already there when an impact blasted it off of the surface of Mars. But instead of accepting McKay's explanation, mainstream science took a different approach. They said that it can't be biology, so it must be geology. Over the next few years, scientists found a way to grow similar structures to what was found inside of the Mars meteorite through chemical concoctions, and ultimately rejected McKay's theory of Martian bacteria. The argument being that they were able to replicate the fossilized structure that resembled bacteria without actual life being present. Although the rest of the scientific community disagreed with McKay, he argued that their results were not valid. He claimed that the results were obtained by using unrealistically pure raw materials as a starting point to chemical processes that are not likely to happen the same way in nature. Until his death in 2013, McKay maintained his belief that the evidence they found was biological in nature, and that Mars did have, at least at one point in time, microbial life. And with the evidence we have today, we know that Mars had liquid water. Unfortunately, it seems like every time new evidence dealing with extraterrestrial life comes forward, scientists find a way to dismiss it. Part of the reason being that the burden of proof standard for extraterrestrial life is incredibly high. But what I find odd is the gaslighting that we see from mainstream scientists in the media. Scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who seem to be tied to a narrative and continue to paint the UFO phenomena as a crazy conspiracy.
Based.
Yes.
And plus, NASA has been looking for life all the time. We're always looking up. But the aliens only apparently visit Navy pilots in restricted airspace. Apparently.
So you don't believe that these UFOs have any people in them?
When this information comes out, there will need to be conclusive evidence because of this high burden of proof standard. But is it possible that we do have evidence somewhere on this planet? Of not just possible alien bacteria and radio waves, but of actual alien technology? Have world governments collected alien spacecraft and attempted to reverse engineer them? Do we have the bodies of the beings that piloted those spacecraft? More and more people in high places are saying yes. When trying to prove, well, anything, you have to take into consideration all of the evidence. And eyewitness accounts are key to any investigation. But a huge part of the burden for accepting an eyewitness account is the credibility of the witness. David Grusch, Ryan Graves, David Fravor, Lou Elizondo. These are the names of highly decorated, respected, and reputable people within the United States military that claim to have knowledge about or even witnessed UFO activity. For someone like world-renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson to poke fun at these highly credentialed people who seem genuinely both fascinated and disturbed by what they witnessed comes across as arrogant. The truth is, people in power are big on secrets, and unfortunately they are incredibly proficient at controlling narratives. Coming forward with information that powerful people don't want getting out could be a disastrous career move. Scientists who entertain fringe theories could lose funding, not to mention the ridicule they would receive from peers for expressing opinions that contradict mainstream science. The evidence surrounding the topic of UFOs became so overwhelming that the Pentagon finally had to admit their existence due to several leaks from the Navy and Air Force. And in August 2023, the United States Congress held a public hearing on claims that the government was concealing a long-standing program that retrieves and reverse engineers UFOs.
Now, the sheer number of reports, whistleblowers, and stories of unidentified anomalous phenomena should raise real questions and warrant investigation and oversight. And that's why we are here today.
This was the first time that our government, outside of the deep state, took an interest in the subject, and this hearing was way more important than you think. It's hard enough to get Congress to work together on serving the needs of the American people, but if there's one way to get a politician's attention, bring up money that they're not getting a piece of. One of the biggest things that was brought to light was the absurd amount of money being spent by the Department of Defense. And most people these days think that the DoD and the Pentagon have the ability to write themselves blank checks because, well, you know, classified. But that's not the way it works. There shouldn't be any government programs in place that don't have oversight from elected officials. It's a reasonable expectation that our Department of Defense and intelligence agencies should have the ability to operate under a certain level of secrecy. We don't want information to get into the wrong hands. There are some things the American people just don't need to know, and believe it or not, we're safer for it. But this is why we elect people to positions of power, to make sure that our government is spending our tax dollars on things that benefit the American people. When unelected officials start dumping billions of dollars into secret programs and telling our elected officials that they don't have the clearance to know about it, this causes big problems. In essence, their actions indicate that they believe their work is too important to follow the regular chain of command. They don't want to wait for the pesky long process of democracy in order to achieve their goals, but ultimately this is taking power away from the people. Admittedly, it's hard to blame them. Let's imagine for a moment that we do have UFOs in a secret base and are attempting to reverse engineer them. Let's also imagine that other governments managed to get their hands on UFOs as well. From what we've seen through captured footage and eyewitness accounts, this technology would change absolutely everything. The first people to reverse engineer this technology will rule the world. Hell, they'll rule the entire solar system. Now let's take a deep look at our politicians. Do they seem like the type of people that we can trust with something this important? We can't even trust them not to accept payments for special interests. What's to stop a greedy, self-interested politician from accepting a payment in exchange for information on a secret program to reverse engineer alien spaceships? It's not likely that our deep state government will come forward and acknowledge these secret programs anytime soon, but their silence on the UFO subject speaks volumes. It tells us that this is more important than we could have imagined. Their lies, disinformation campaigns, and criminal behavior over the years tells us that they are willing to go to the extreme to protect whatever secrets they have. Luckily for us, this is a genie they can't keep in the bottle forever. Recent events with whistleblowers, document and video leaks are evidence that they are being exposed, and the truth will come out. Journalists like Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp have been fighting on the front lines of UFO disclosure for decades.
Hello and welcome to On the Record. Flying saucers, extraterrestrials, monsters from outer space. The government has been telling us for years that they're not real. They're weather balloons, or swamp gas, or reflections from the sun, or the ravings of lunatics.
They've managed to destigmatize the topic and bring it to the mainstream, making it easier for people to come forward with information.
He said the US government has a UFO in our possession. Already, that's amazing that he admitted that. Then he says, we have an exploitation program to reverse engineer it. And then third, we breached the hull of that craft.
But even if we just take into consideration the thousands of eyewitness accounts from people going back as far as 1450 BC, strange lights in the sky emanating from cigar and saucer-shaped objects, it still amounts to piles of evidence. There are so many amazing UFO stories out there that it's hard to pick a favorite. Even legendary musician and former Beatle John Lennon claims to have witnessed a UFO that he later references in his 1977 song, Nobody Told Me.
Up there, I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river. It wasn't a helicopter, and it wasn't a balloon, and it was so near.
And it looked what, sort of round, white, luminescent, and silent?
Silent, and it looked dark, like black or gray in the middle, and had white lights, just looked like light bulbs, you know? Just going off, on, blink, 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 blink.
But perhaps one of the biggest paradigm shifts over the last 25 years when it comes to non-human intelligent life didn't come from our government or even our scientists. It came from the Catholic Church. It's well-known history that the Catholic Church used to push one narrative. Earth is the center of the universe, and humans are the only intelligent creatures in that universe. People who dared think otherwise were at the very least called crazy, and at the worst, locked up or executed. Of course, the Catholic Church is an organization that's been forced to evolve over the centuries, especially when evidence becomes so overwhelming that it's impossible to deny it. Could you imagine the credibility of the church today if they still supported the claim that the Earth was flat and that the sun revolves around it? Just like other undeniable facts, the Catholic Church has no option but to change the way they think when big change is on the horizon. One problem with the Christian religion when it comes to the argument of alien life is Jesus Christ. For Christians, Jesus is a gatekeeper. If you want to get to heaven, you gotta go through him. But imagine how upset the aliens would be if they showed up on our doorstep to find out that their only way to enter heaven is through a human being born over 2,000 years ago on the planet Earth. If there were absolutely no truth to life existing outside of our planet, the church could continue to ignore it. Instead, it seems as though they decided to get ahead of it. In 2008, Father Jose Funes, director of the Vatican Observatory, said we should consider alien life as an extraterrestrial brother and as a part of God's creation. And if aliens exist, they may be a different life form that does not need Christ's redemption.
In the universe, so big, huge, I would say, as the one where we live, with 100 billion of galaxies, with each galaxy with 100 billion of stars. Probably with many of these stars having planets, it could be possible that our life could evolve as the way we know on Earth.
According to Father Funes, the incarnation of the Son of God is possibly a unique event in the history of humanity, making it possible for there to be alien life without contradicting the Church's belief in Jesus Christ. This is a pretty big deal, being that the Vatican does not change their stance on a whim, especially when it comes to our place in the universe. And it's a far stretch to say that the Vatican has adopted this new belief, but it does make it appear as though they know something we don't. But I think the biggest question people ask is why? Why keep something this important a secret? It doesn't make sense. In fact, it doesn't seem plausible that they even could keep the secret. Until you think about the consequences of knowing. This information has the power to destabilize governments and make people question religion. It has the potential for chaos. At least, that's what they believe. But it would also put the spotlight on people and government agencies who lied and went to extreme measures to keep the secret. Disclosure would mean a lot more than just learning the truth about alien life. It would also expose the criminal activity of those who kept the secret. Self-preservation is powerful. People will go to extremes to protect themselves, and a secret this big is built on a house of cards. Expose one person and more will fall with them. This is why we see the absurd amount of overclassification by the intelligence agencies. Whether or not you believe that we have seen true evidence of alien life so far is up to you. On one hand, the evidence is there, but we haven't had a sweeping consensus from any world governments or the scientific community stating the evidence is fact. But for the people out there that still believe this is all just nonsense, you're not paying attention. We haven't been throwing billions of dollars into the research of extraterrestrial life because we don't believe it's out there. To the contrary, we do it because we know it's out there, and we want to understand it, possibly even prepare for it or benefit from it. It's hard to imagine what will happen to the world after conclusive evidence of alien life is brought to light. My guess is some people will still be skeptical, and others will barely care as long as it doesn't affect kickoff time. But if you're one of the few out there that are truly curious, then keep your eyes open. Pay attention not to what the scientific community is saying, but what they're doing. And always, follow the money. And that is it for this episode. Thank you for keeping me company. Remember, the world is full of incredible stories, so please keep coming back for more. And if there's a story you'd like to hear me share or a topic you'd like to hear me talk about, please feel free to reach out. I've got the email address in the description for you, or just leave a comment. Also, if you enjoyed the content, I'd ask that you please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All of the stuff that we ask you to do, these small clicks of a button have such a huge impact on the channel, and it helps me out a lot more than you know. So until next time, thanks again, and take care of yourselves out there. We'll see you.